Picture this. I'm standing on the edge of a crumbling iron platform, the cold mountain wind biting at my skin, and above me, a fractured glass dome reveals a sky so vast it feels like it could swallow me whole. My name is Delilah, and at 35, I've spent over a decade tethered to a man whose heart seems to belong more to the stars than to me. My husband, Ethan, is 38, an astrophysicist with eyes that burn with a quiet, unrelenting fire for the cosmos. I used to think that fire could warm me too, but now I'm not so sure. We're here, in the heart of the Rockies, at an abandoned observatory turned remote guest house, a place that feels like it's been forgotten by time itself. This trip was supposed to be our chance to stitch up the fraying edges of our bond, but as I stare out at the endless night, I can't shake the feeling that something deeper, something darker, is waiting to unravel. Ethan and I met back in college, under a blanket of stars at a campus stargazing event. I was a literature major, more interested in the stories of the constellations than the science behind them, but his voice, low and steady as he explained the physics of a dying star, pulled me in. I remember the way his hand brushed mine as he pointed to Orion's belt, a spark igniting in that fleeting touch. That night, we stayed out until dawn, tangled in conversation and something more, a heat that left us breathless under the open sky. Over the years, though, that warmth has faded. His passion for the universe grew into an obsession, and I've become a footnote in his endless research papers and late-night calculations. I crave connection, a tether to pull me back into his orbit, but most days, I feel like a shadow trailing behind his brilliance. 12 years of marriage, and I'm still searching for the man who once looked at me like I was his whole galaxy. This place, this observatory, was my idea, a long, dreamed-of escape to somewhere as otherworldly as his mind. I thought if I could bring him back to the stars in a tangible way, maybe I'd find a piece of us again. The moment we arrived, though, I felt the weight of its history pressing down on me. The rusted iron staircases spiral upward like skeletal remains, creaking underfoot as if protesting our presence. Massive glass domes loom overhead, cracked in places, letting slivers of starlight spill through in jagged patterns. At night, the air inside feels charged, almost alive, as if the light itself is whispering secrets through the shattered panes. Old mechanisms, once used to track celestial bodies, groan in the silence, their metallic echoes bouncing off the stone walls. It's beautiful in an eerie, haunting way, a relic of discovery now steeped in decay. I can't help but wonder what stories these walls hold, what dreams or despairs were etched into the cold metal and glass. I had envisioned this getaway as a chance to reconnect, but the journey up to this forgotten observatory was anything but romantic. The drive was grueling, hours of winding mountain roads that twisted and turned like a serpent's spine, each curve sharper than the last. My hands gripped the steering wheel tight, knuckles pale, as the air grew thinner with every mile we climbed. My chest felt tight, not just from the altitude, but from the silence between us in the car. Ethan sat beside me, his nose buried in a notebook, scribbling equations or observations. I couldn't tell which. I kept stealing glances at him, hoping for a word, a smile, anything, but he was lost in his own world, as unreachable as the peaks piercing the horizon. By the time we pulled up to the observatory, the sun was dipping low, painting the sky in deep purples and golds. And there it was, rising out of the twilight, a massive silhouette against the fading light. The structure loomed like a sentinel, its domes resembling giant, unblinking eyes gazing into the endless void above. I felt a shiver crawl down my spine, not just from the chill of the evening, but from the sheer weight of the place, as if it held secrets too vast for me to grasp. Stepping out of the car, my boots crunched on the gravel, and I took a moment to breathe in the sharp, cold air. We hauled our bags to the guest house, a smaller building tucked beside the main observatory, and as we pushed through the heavy door, the musty scent of old wood and rusted metal hit me like a wave. The halls echoed with every step, cold and cavernous, lined with faded photographs of astronomers from decades past. Their stern faces stared out from behind cracked glass frames, their eyes seeming to follow us as we moved deeper inside. I felt like an intruder, walking through a mausoleum of forgotten dreams. Ethan, though, was buzzing with energy. His face lit up in a way I hadn't seen in months as we reached the main dome. There, in the center, sat the remnants of a massive telescope mount, its iron skeleton rusted but still imposing. He ran his fingers over the gears, murmuring to himself about focal lengths and aperture sizes, completely oblivious to me standing just a few feet away. I reached out, wanting to share in his wonder, to lace my fingers through his as we explored this relic together, but he pulled away, without even noticing, scribbling furiously in his notebook. That small rejection stung more than I'd expected, a quiet ache settling into my chest. That first night, I tried to make the best of it. I found the tiny communal kitchen, its counters chipped and stained, and decided to cook us a simple dinner, something warm to cut through the chill of the mountain air. I chopped vegetables with a dull knife, the rhythmic sound of the blade against the cutting board, the only noise in the stillness. I kept hoping Ethan would wander in, drawn by the smell of garlic and herbs, that we'd sit down. The fourth day at this isolated observatory in the Rockies started like the others, with a heavy silence between Ethan and me, the kind that feels like it could crush you under its weight. I'd spent the morning wandering the creaky halls, tracing my fingers over the cold, rusted railings, trying to find some semblance of purpose in this place that felt more like a tomb than a retreat. But everything shifted in the late afternoon when the sound of tires crunching on gravel broke through the stillness. I peered out the narrow window of the guest house and saw a dusty SUV pulling up, 3 figures stepping out into the fading light. Ethan's colleagues had arrived, just as he'd mentioned they might. I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. More people to remind me how little I belonged in his world. There was Marcus, tall and wiry, probably in his 40s, with a sharp edge to his words that cut through the air as soon as he spoke. His quick, biting humor seemed to fill the space, though it only made me feel smaller. Then there was Julian, in his 30s, I'd guess, with a soft, low voice that carried a strange calm, his piercing eyes catching mine for just a moment as he unloaded equipment from the vehicle. And finally, Victor, the oldest of the trio, a gruff researcher whose presence seemed to demand attention, his booming voice echoing off the stone walls as he barked orders about where to set up. The observatory, once so quiet and oppressive, suddenly buzzed with life. Their laughter, their technical chatter about distant galaxies and cosmic phenomena, it all swirled around me like a language I couldn't hope to understand. I felt like an outsider in a space that was already alien to me, my presence barely registering as they hauled in portable telescopes and laptops, their voices overlapping with terms like quasars and event horizons. I tried to make myself useful, to bridge the gap that yawned wider with every passing minute. I offered to help set up their gear in the main dome, carrying a heavy case of lenses up the spiraling iron staircase, my arms aching under the weight. But as I stood there, listening to Marcus debate with Victor over calibration settings, while Julian murmured something about light pollution, I realized how stranded I was. My attempts at small talk fell flat, met with polite nods or distracted grunts. I didn't belong in their orbit any more than I belonged in Ethan's. By the time the sun dipped below the jagged peaks, painting the sky in deep indigo, I'd retreated to the edges of their world, watching from a distance as they prepared for a late-night observation session under the open dome. That evening, as the temperature dropped and the mountain air turned biting, I wrapped myself in a scratchy wool blanket and settled on a rusted metal bench near the edge of the dome. The cracked glass above me framed a sky so clear it felt like I could reach out and touch the stars, though they seemed as distant as ever. The group clustered near the center, their voices a low hum of excitement as they adjusted equipment and pointed at charts. Ethan was there, of course, his focus sharper than I'd seen in years, his hands steady as he fine-tuned a small telescope. I watched him, the way his brow furrowed in concentration, the way his whole being seemed to light up under the weight of the cosmos. It was a look he hadn't given me in so long, and the ache in my chest grew heavier, a quiet longing for something I wasn't sure I'd ever have again. I was lost in that thought, the cold seeping through the blanket, when I heard soft footsteps approaching. I looked up to see Julian, his quiet demeanor a stark contrast to the boisterous energy of Marcus and Victor. He carried himself with an ease that felt almost out of place here, his piercing eyes catching the faint starlight as he sat down beside me on the bench. My breath hitched for a moment, unsure of what to say, but he broke the silence first, his voice low and warm, like a gentle current pulling me in. He asked about the observatory, not the science of it, but its history. Had I read about the astronomers who once worked here? It's midnight now, and the observatory feels like a different world under the weight of the night. The air is cold, sharp enough to sting my cheeks as I stand near the edge of the dome, the vast sky above fractured through the cracked glass. Starlight spills in, casting long, ghostly shadows across the interior, painting the rusted metal floor in silver streaks. The dome hums with a quiet energy, the wind slipping through the gaps in the glass, whispering secrets I can't quite decipher. It's haunting, beautiful, and suffocating all at once. Down below, in the center of the space, Ethan and the others are still deep in their discussions, their voices a distant murmur as they toss around theories about distant galaxies and cosmic riddles. I can hear Marcus's sharp tone cutting through, Victor's gruff interjections, and Ethan's steady, focused cadence. A sound I used to find comforting, but now it just feels like another wall between us. I can't sit still anymore. My restlessness is a living thing, clawing at me from the inside. I pace along the edge of the dome, my boots scuffing against the cold floor, my hands shoved deep into the pockets of my jacket to keep them from trembling. Every step echoes in the cavernous space, a lonely sound that mirrors the ache in my chest. I keep glancing toward Ethan, hoping for a flicker of acknowledgement, a sign that he sees me here, on the fringes of his world. But his back is to me, hunched over a notebook as he scribbles furiously, lost in equations and star charts. The others don't notice me either, their focus locked on the mysteries of the universe, while I'm left wrestling with my own insignificant storms. I stop near a spiral staircase, its iron frame curling upward into the shadows, and lean against the railing, the metal biting into my palms with its chill. That's when I hear the soft tread of footsteps behind me, deliberate and quiet. I turn, and there's Julian, his silhouette framed by the faint glow of starlight filtering through the dome. His presence is a sudden warmth in the cold, his piercing eyes catching mine with an intensity that makes my breath hitch. He steps closer, his voice low, almost a whisper, as he asks if I'm okay. There's a weight to his words, a genuine concern that catches me off guard, and before I can stop myself, everything spills out. I tell him how invisible I feel, how I've been fading into the background of Ethan's life for years, a ghost in my own marriage. My voice cracks as the words tumble out, raw and unfiltered, each one heavier than the last. I confess how I thought this trip would change things, how I'd hoped to reclaim a piece of what we lost, but instead, I'm more alone than ever. Julian listens, unmoving, his gaze steady and unyielding, and it's like he's seeing straight through me, peeling back layers I've kept hidden even from myself. My skin prickles under the weight of his attention, a strange heat blooming in my chest despite the icy air around us. I feel exposed, vulnerable, but also seen, in a way I haven't been in so long. Before I can pull myself back together, another set of footsteps approaches, sharper this time. Marcus appears from the shadows near the staircase, his sly smile glinting in the dim light as he takes in the scene. There's a knowing edge to his expression, like he's caught the undercurrent of tension between Julian and me, and it makes my stomach twist. He doesn't say anything at first, just leans against the railing a few feet away, his casual posture at odds with the sharpness in his eyes. I can feel the air shift, charged with something unspoken, and I wonder what he's piecing together in that quick mind of his. Out of the corner of my eye, I notice Victor lingering further back, near one of the old telescope mounts, his heavy gaze fixed on us. It's unreadable, but it presses down on me like a physical weight, adding to the storm brewing inside. The setting around us only amplifies the tension. The hum of the wind through the cracks in the glass grows louder, a mourn. It's the early morning hours of our last night at this forsaken observatory, and the weight of everything I've been carrying feels like it's finally shattered me. My voice is raw, torn between defiance and a deep, gnawing shame as I let myself unravel in the shadows of this decaying place. I can still feel the cold iron of the narrow staircase biting into my palms as Julian and I slipped away from the others, descending to a secluded platform beneath the main dome. The metal was icy against my skin, a sharp contrast to the heat building inside me as we pressed close, hidden from the world above. The air down here was thick, heavy with the scent of rust and something primal, something I hadn't felt in years. My heart pounded so loud I swore it echoed off the walls, a desperate rhythm matching the chaos in my mind. Julian's hands were gentle yet firm, guiding me with a certainty that made my breath catch. The starlight filtered through the cracked glass of the dome far above, casting an ethereal glow over us, painting our tangled silhouettes in silver and shadow. It was like we were caught in some otherworldly painting, a moment stolen from time itself. I let myself drown in it. The rush of being held, of being desired after so many years of neglect. It was a hunger I'd buried deep, now clawing its way to the surface, and I didn't fight it. I couldn't. Every touch, every whispered breath against my skin felt like a reclaiming of something I'd lost, a piece of myself I'd forgotten even existed. Then, in a shocking twist that sent my pulse racing even faster, Marcus appeared on the platform, his presence unexpected, but somehow not unwelcome. His sly grin cut through the dim light, and before I could process it, Victor was there too, his heavy gaze locking onto us with an intensity that made my skin prickle. What unfolded next was a chaotic, forbidden dance, a blur of hands and hushed voices, boundaries dissolving under the weight of unspoken need. It was reckless, wild, a storm of sensation that I let myself get swept into. I can still feel the cold metal at my back, the warmth of their nearness, the way every nerve in my body seemed to ignite under the starlit haze. It was a moment of pure, unfiltered abandon, a rebellion against the emptiness that had defined me for so long. Above us, mere feet away in the main dome, Ethan stood oblivious, his eye pressed to the lens of his telescope, peering at a star 200 light-years distant. The irony wasn't lost on me. Him, lost in the vastness of the cosmos, while I was caught in a very different orbit, grounded in the raw, messy reality of here and now. My mind flickered to him, a fleeting thought amidst the whirlwind, wondering if he'd sense something, if he'd turn and see me for once. But even as I spiraled deeper into the moment, I knew he wouldn't. And in that heat, in that tangled web of defiance and desire, I found I didn't care. I liked it. I reveled in it. There was no regret, not then, not when every touch felt like a victory, a way to claw back some part of myself that had been slipping away for years. Time seemed to stretch and bend, minutes or hours lost to the haze, until the intensity began to ebb, leaving me breathless and unsteady. My clothes were askew, my hair a mess. My skin flushed with the aftermath as I made my way back up the iron staircase, each step heavier than the last. The cold metal creaked underfoot, a stark reminder of where I was, of what I'd just done. I emerged into the main dome, my chest tight with a mix of exhilaration and dread, hoping, maybe even praying, that Ethan would be there, that he'd look at me with something, anything, in his eyes. I wanted him to see me, to feel the weight of my presence, to finally care. But as my gaze swept the cavernous space, I saw nothing but emptiness where he'd been. The spot where he'd stood, hunched over his equipment, was bare. His telescope, his notebook, all packed away and gone. The eye waked to the harsh gray of dawn seeping through the cracked dome above. The starlight long gone, replaced by a cold, unfeeling light that seems to strip everything bare. I'm alone in our small guest room, the narrow bed beside me untouched, the sheets still neatly tucked, as if no one ever intended to sleep there. My body aches, a deep, dull throb in my muscles, a reminder of the reckless abandon from hours before. The air carries the lingering scent of metal and sweat, a sharp tang that clings to my skin and won't let me forget. My chest feels hollow, a cavernous emptiness where something, hope, maybe, used to live. I sit up slowly, the creak of the old mattress echoing in the silence, and realize with a sinking dread that Ethan hasn't come back. Not to the room, not to me. The observatory is eerily quiet as I stumble to my feet, the usual hum of distant voices or the clatter of equipment absent. It's as if the place itself is holding its breath, waiting for the fallout of what I've done. I pull on a jacket over my rumpled clothes, the fabric rough against my still sensitive skin, and step into the narrow hallway of the guest house. My boots scuff against the worn floorboards as I call out for him, my voice thin and unsteady. "Ethan? Are you there?" The words bounce off the stone walls, reverberating down the empty corridors, but there's no answer, just the mocking echo of my own desperation. I move faster, checking the communal kitchen with its chipped counters, the small lounge area with its sagging chairs, even the stairwell leading up to the main dome. Nothing. No sign of him, no trace of Marcus, Julian, or Victor either. It's as if they've all vanished into the thin mountain air, leaving me to face the wreckage alone. My legs feel heavy as I drag myself back to our room, defeat settling into my bones like frost. I push open the door, expecting the same barren space I left, but something catches my eye on the pillow. A single plane ticket, crisp and white, lying there like a silent accusation. My breath catches as I step closer, the paper cold to the touch as I pick it up with trembling hands. It's a one-way ticket home, dated for today, my name printed neatly across the top. There's no note, no scribbled explanation, just this stark, impersonal farewell. I stare at it, my vision blurring at the edges, and it hits me like a physical blow. This is Ethan's goodbye. Not a word, not a confrontation, just this quiet, cutting act of detachment. It slices deeper than any argument ever could, a final confirmation that I've lost him, that whatever thread still tied us together has been severed for good. I sink onto the edge of the bed, the ticket still clutched in my hand, and let the weight of it all crash over me. My mind replays the night before, the forbidden rush, the way I let myself fall into that storm of need and defiance. I wanted to be seen, to feel something after years of fading into the background of his life. And I did. I felt alive. Electric. In a way I hadn't in so long. But now, in the cold light of morning, I'm left with the cost. I search my heart for regret, for some shred of remorse over what I allowed to happen under that starlit dome, but I find none. My voice, if I could speak it aloud, would be defiant, even as it breaks. I wanted this. I needed this, even if it meant burning everything to ash. I needed to matter, to someone, to myself, even if just for a fleeting moment. And yet, sitting here with this ticket as my only companion, I can't help but wonder if being noticed was worth the price of being left behind. The silence of the room presses in, suffocating, and I can't stay still any longer. I shove the ticket into my pocket and make my way out of the guest house, the cold mountain air hitting me like a slap as I step outside. The observatory looms behind me, its fractured domes casting long shadows across. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment if you enjoyed this story. This will help us create more engaging stories for you.